from New York. No, we are in Laguna Woods, and it's the Laguna Woods Show with your host and moderator, Esther Grossfield. Here's Esther.
Hi, welcome to the Laguna Woods Show, where every guest matters. Today we have a very special guest. He's the president of the Cannabis Club of Laguna Woods, and he's one of the founders of Medical Cannabis Collective, and his name is Lonnie Painter.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So nice to have you here. My first question is, what do you want the public to know about cannabis?
Well, they should know that this is a very old medicine, several thousand years. I think one of the earliest artifacts they found is 3,000 years old. But there's records that go back thousands of years. And here in the United States, it was a medicine from about 1855, 1860 till the 1940. So most drugstores in the early 1900s, you would go in and many of the medicines had cannabis as one of the ingredients. Safe, one of the safest therapeutically active substances there is.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of talk about CBD and THC. Can you tell us a little bit about the CBD?
Yeah, so the plant has over 500 different chemicals in it. The cannabinoids, which are THC and CBD, they're two among anywhere from 80 to 100 plus. Some of them are still being discovered. THC is one of the very few psychoactive ones. CBD is non-psychoactive. So most cannabis has lots of THC, a little bit of CBD. To have CBD in the cannabis plant, it has to be specially bred for that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And CBD is the one that's non-psychoactive and has a long list of medical benefits.
What list? What type of medical benefits?
Probably the most well-known one is anti-seizure effects. So CBD is being used for children since it's non-psychoactive. And it's really helping to alleviate these seizures, even stopping them in some kids. But it doesn't work for all types of seizures. And it appears that there's some specific genetic mutations that will enable to work better. Also on this CBD, there's lots of hype going on, and people need to be aware of that.
Like what?
So it is not as, especially if it's from hemp, so which is usually they call it pure CBD.
Yeah.
It is not very effective unless it is in very large doses.
Yeah.
And the dose that will work, it's limited. It can't be way under it. It can't be way over it. So it's there's been research into this, and they find CBD from cannabis, because it has a lot of other cannabinoids and terpenes and other chemicals with it, it works much better than CBD alone.
Wow. So there's a lot of research about the CBD. And where is a reliable research? The internet has a lot of research. Where can people go for a reliable information?
Yeah, there are a few sites, and a few. Most of these sites have got a lot of rumors,
I know.
you know, things like that. But PubMed.gov, so that's part of the U.S. Department's Health and Human Services. ClinicalTrials.gov, Google Scholar, Project CBD, and the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. Those, you'll get good, reliable, scientific information.
You showed me that it could cure cancer. I mean, it could. What about that?
Yeah, so the federal government has known since the 1970s. It was a study, I believe it was done at the University of Virginia Medical School, They had gotten a grant to prove that cannabis caused lung cancer and a couple of other cancers. And instead, what they found was these cannabinoids had anti-tumor effects. Well, when they reported their findings, the research was shut down. Any remaining monies was taken back. The government tried to get possession of everything that had been printed about that study. And it was kind of lost for a number of years until a journalist did research and found that information. But now the National Cancer Institute, on their website, if you would go to it, it tells you that these cannabinoids have anti-tumor effects. And it goes on to say which kinds of cancer that cannabinoids have been shown to kill. But of course, most of these studies are done in the labs, and they're done with animals. The government has not allowed any human studies of cannabis as a cancer drug. There is a patent held by a British pharmaceutical company on cannabinoids as a cancer therapy. So we know, there's no doubt about it, that these cannabinoids have anti-tumor effects. They kill cancer cells in a number of ways.
And our body is made out of cannabinoid, no?
Well, we have what was only discovered in the early 1990s. It's called the endocannabinoid system.
Yeah.
So your body produces chemicals that are somewhat cannabinoid-like. It produces a receptor. It produces a chemical that works on the receptor. It produces enzymes that then break that down. And so these things are often created on demand where needed. And what the goal of these cannabinoids are is to bring the body into homeostasis, back into balance. So your body tries to cure its own illnesses. That's why we have this immune system. Often they believe that people have a cannabinoid deficiency. The body's not producing enough of them. So the thought is, much like taking a vitamin, you can take these plant cannabinoids, they're called phyto, P-H-Y-T-O, cannabinoids, and they will boost your body's ability to create the natural ones. Wow. They've only discovered a couple of them so far, but they believe there are others. So they work on receptors in different parts of the body. Some of them are in the brain and nervous system. The rest of them are throughout the body, the skin, and immune organs and things.
Wow. So let's talk about, there are a lot of people that are growers and they use pesticide. We should tell people about the pesticide.
Yeah, so it's a major problem. People don't realize how prevalent pesticides are. And unless your cannabis is tested for pesticides, you have no way to know if they're there. There's been research, the workshop, a lab in Los Angeles, they did the research. They had gotten cannabis, they sprayed it with pesticides, they had a machine that did the smoking, and then they analyzed that smoke and to discover how much of it could you actually inhale into your lungs. People think because you light it and it's on fire that it kills these pesticides, but you're toking on the end with no heat. So you can absorb quite a bit of these, and in the medical literature, there are cases of people getting severe lung damage, not a sore throat or a cough, severe lung damage. And they found different news medias went out, bought samples in the dispensaries and tested them. They found up to 1,000 times the allowable amount of pesticides that would be allowed in food crops. There's no regulations for cannabis yet. But, and so people are using pesticides, they're using growth hormones, all sorts of chemicals to make the plant grow faster, bigger, maybe smell a certain way. There's a lot of destructive things done, to make money, profit drives a lot of things.
Yeah. Does the oil or the edibles, do they have pesticide too in it?
They could, yes, yeah. And so the only way you know is if that product has been tested for pesticides.
So there's a special place that...
Yeah, there's, we have a few cannabis labs in California. Unfortunately, there's no accrediting agency that goes in and makes sure these labs have the technology, nor the skills, nor the personnel that can do these. So, we have some labs that may be set up in somebody's basement and they're advertising. Nobody's going out and checking this, so you have to make sure that this is a real lab that has accredited personnel and the right technology.
It needs to be regulated.
It needs to be regulated. We do have some regulations that are supposed to kick in January.
Yeah.
That remains to be seen.
Yeah. So what are the new laws that are going to come up in January?
Yeah, so a lot of this, so Prop 64 was like 62 pages long.
Yeah.
Hardly nobody read it and they voted for it. So that's the old pig in a poke. You approve something and you don't even know what you've approved. Unlike most propositions, 64 had written in it, it can be changed. There was a lot of blanks in there that would be filled in later. A lot of them haven't been filled in yet, so we don't know all the restrictions, what's going to be allowed. We're not sure yet how much people are going to be able to buy. We're not sure what the THC content can be. Some states have put a very low amount of THC. My understanding is that edibles are going to have to change the way they're produced.
Really?
Right now, you can buy a candy bar with 240 milligrams of THC in it. The allowable dose in some states is 10 milligrams.
Wow.
So this is enough for maybe 20 people, and it's in one candy bar.
Wow.
So hopefully this will be taken care of.
Yeah.
I have my doubts. Government has not been known to be very efficient.
So if the CBD that helps people, how many milligrams, is that how it goes? I mean, does it have to be like, how many milligrams does it have to be to help the people?
Yeah, so cannabis is somewhat of a personalized medicine where people have to work out their own doses, and so you have a general idea for medical use. You start with a very low dose and you gradually increase it day by day until you find the dose that works for you. And you have to keep increasing it unless you get side effects. And the reason you start really low is because cannabis is called a biphasic medicine. Different doses can have different effects. A low dose can have the opposite effect of a high dose. Some people need very low doses, and that can work best sometimes. Somebody else may need a very high dose. But the last thing you want is somebody to take a dose that's going to make them feel extremely uncomfortable, anxious, and then they're going to say, I'm not going to do this again. And it could be the answer to their problems.
They should start with a low dose.
Start with a low dose. And so these manufacturers of this hemp-derived CBD, while they may be saying you only need a drop or two, you may need hundreds of milligrams. With cannabis, CBD from cannabis, because all these other compounds are in there.
Yes.
And scientists call it the entourage effect or synergy. So there's been the experiments where they would test a certain milligram dose of THC and it would produce, say, a 5 on a chart of 10. They would test the CB or the THC and it would have a 5 on this chart. But combined, the results might not be a 10, it might be a 50. So when they're together, they're just much more effective. They call them the power couple. Oh. So THC and CBD together is a great medicine. CBD by itself has turned into be a con game. There's thousands of companies that are selling hemp CBD.
Yes, yeah.
Where is it coming from? Very little of it is grown in the United States because it's mostly illegal to grow.
Hemp.
Most of it is coming from somewhere in Eastern Europe, maybe China. There was a big expose a few years back on Project CBD about all these problems that there was with this hemp CBD.
Yeah.
They were finding heavy metals in it, all kinds of toxic chemicals. These manufacturers and producers are claiming that problem has been solved, but they're still really exaggerating how much you need and how fast you're going to get these benefits. And it turns somebody off. When they think they're going to find relief the first time and they don't, they get discouraged and may give up. Mm-hmm. This is a very good medicine, helps many people, but they need to take it in the right manner.
The right amount.
The right manner. Start low, very low, and start increasing the dose until you find what works. And I would encourage people not to be scared of THC. I hear so many people saying, I don't want to get high. Don't let me get high. That's not anything to be scared of.
Does THC itself has some medical benefits?
Absolutely. It's got a whole list of those benefits. Pain, it helps chronic pain. It's called a neuroprotectant. It's anti-inflammatory, helps people sleep. It can reduce muscle spasms. It helps with headaches, migraine headaches. The list is just miles long. It's unlike prescription drugs, which are usually one active chemical. They usually do one thing. Cannabis can work on, multiple problems at the same time.
So you have all kinds of certificates. What are all those certificates that you have?
Yes, yeah. So I was a chef before I moved here. When I retired, I owned a restaurant in Laguna Beach. I went to culinary school. I had used cannabis on and off for about 50 years. When we moved to Laguna Woods, my wife and I, not long after we got here, the Concerned Citizen held a big discussion on the drug war and medical marijuana. I hadn't met anybody in Laguna Woods that used cannabis at that point. We went to that meeting and it was packed. There were hundreds of people. And there were dispensaries over in Lake Forest, but Lake Forest trying to shut them down. There were 6 of them in one building, but it was upstairs. Very unpleasant to go there. So after that meeting by the Concerned Citizens, a small group got together to find how can we bring this medicine into Laguna Woods? How do we get it available for our residents? So I joined that small group. We met once a week for several weeks. And one of those people was Anna Boyce, who helped write Prop 215, which legalized it for medical use in California. So we met for a long time, and we finally decided we would start our own collective.
Yeah.
So we could supply this medicine for ourselves and for residents. So we did the work, we put it together. I wrote up our collective agreement. I had a lot of help from people at WHAM in Santa Cruz and Normal and ASA. I wrote up our collective agreement. We took it to a lawyer in Los Angeles. He said, yes, it's legal, go ahead. So we started it, and in the beginning we grew in Garden Center too. And of course, when we started, there was only maybe 20 of us. And we were able to give it away free in the beginning. And if you were patient, you could come and put your plants in the garden. The only agreement was you would give some of it to the collective so we could provide it to somebody who couldn't grow. But, you know, GRF made that against the rules, so we couldn't grow it ourselves anymore. But that was a long time ago, too, about 7 years ago. And we've made lots of advances now. We have a farm in Northern California, a 200-acre organic farm that grows all this for us. I go up, I bring it back down. Because we don't have a lot of middlemen involved, we're able to get this at a much lower price than you would have to pay to go in one of these dispensaries. And we were one of the first collectives in Orange County to institute mandatory lab testing of the cannabis. So we tested for pesticides, mold, yeast, bacteria, cannabinoids, terpenes. So we know a lot about these products that we have. We have it extracted, I mix it, I have some help from some chemist. But I started studying this very seriously when we put this together. I've spent thousands of hours going over research papers. I've joined the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, so that's one of those certificates is from them. So I am going through and am about to finish the same programs a doctor would go through to learn about cannabis medicine and the endocannabinoid system. So this was a program put together by the Society of Cannabis Clinicians for doctors. They get continuing education credits for that. So I've been to numerous conferences in the U.S. and in Europe. This year I went to a 3-day conference at Harvard Medical School.
Wow.
When Harvard Medical School starts having conferences about medical cannabis, it's mainstream, you know, it's real. I went to a school in the Netherlands at the only grower of pharmaceutical grade cannabis in the world. It's called Bedrocan, the most advanced medical cannabis company there is. It's a school that government officials go to, researchers, to learn how cannabis can be a prescription medicine. Because in California, we don't have that ability. Our plants are different. Even the same strain in the same row, each one can be different. So unfortunately, there's a lot of variety or variability. You know, 1 year or one season, you may use this and you find a lot of relief, but next season, the same grower, same plant may be different. So it's difficult to discover the right methods, and it can take time. Can work right away for some people, but usually you have to work at finding the right dose, the right medicine.
The Israelis, they do a lot of research, don't they? I heard it.
Yeah, there's very little research being done in the U.S. as compared to other countries. Yes, Israel is one of the leading research countries. I think there's at least 30 clinical studies going on right now, and a number of others that are in waiting to be approved. So they've learned lots of things in Israel. They've discovered that CBD helps strengthen bones. So your body's constantly breaking down bone and reabsorbing those materials and constantly producing bone. Well, they found that CBD slows down the destruction and speeds up the production. It actually makes bones stronger. And this is all an emerging science.
Just the beginning.
Yeah, it's the beginnings, yeah. So many researchers say this plant is a whole pharmacy of medicines. And there's going to be great discoveries made in the future. There's a company in England, a $2 billion pharmaceutical company. They have a line of cannabis medicines they're creating for diabetes, schizophrenia. They just did a human trial in Israel for a very aggressive type of brain cancer. I believe it's the only second human trial to take place in the world
Wow.
for cancer.
What is this thing here?
Oh, yeah.
Let's
so
talk about that.
the federal government is telling us that marijuana, cannabis, has no medical value at all. That is the most dangerous, addictive drug there is. Well, the federal government owns a patent on the use of the cannabinoids as a neuroprotectant, and that they lease that patent out to drug companies who try to discover how cannabis does these things, and then they will develop a drug that can do that and then sell it to you for a huge amount of money. But so the federal government has also been giving out cannabis as a prescription medicine for over 40 years. And it comes in cans like this. So these people that were getting this, they got 300 joints every month. And there's still people that are getting these. And so this man, this is his book.
This is his book.
And with one of these cans, yes, there are still 2 people alive in this program that are getting their cannabis every month from the government. So while the government says it has no medical value, they're giving it out as a prescription medicine.
Wow. Wow, it was a lot of information. I'm glad that we talked about it and people are going to learn from our interview. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for watching, and next time we'll have another interesting person. Thank you. Bye.